Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Shri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Tanya. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Jai Sri Sri Radha Madhava Ki Jai, Sri Radha Govardhana Hari Ki Jai. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Okay, we've read the verse for today. this verse we usually sing as an invocation instead of Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudeva, but it's actually the verse for today. Adi Leela, chapter 16, text number 2. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya. All glories to Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Jaya. All glories. Nityananda. To Lord Nityananda Prabhu. Jaya Advaita Chandra. All glories to Advaita Chandra. Jaya. All glories. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. To all the devotees of the Lord. So I apologize I didn't give a chance for the Vaishnavas. Anybody like to chant the verse? Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Ladies. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. All glories to Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. All glories to Lord Nityananda. All glories to Advaita Chandra. And all glories to all the devotees of the Lord. Please repeat. All glories to Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. All glories to Lord Nityananda. All glories to Advaita Chandra. And all glories to all the devotees of the Lord. Text 3. Jiyat Kaishora Chaitanyor Murti Matya Grihashramat Lakshmi Archito Ta Vagdevyadisham Jai Jaya Chalat. Translation. Long live Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his Kaishora age. Both the goddess of fortune and the goddess of learning worship him. The goddess of learning, Saraswati, worshipped him in his victory over the scholar who had conquered all the world. And the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi Devi, worshipped him at home. Since he is therefore the husband or lord of both goddesses, I offer my obeisances unto him. Text 4. Eta Kaishora Lilara Sutra Anubandha Shishya Gana Padaite Karila Aramba. At the age of 11, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began to teach students. This marks the beginning of his Kaishora age. As soon as the Lord, text 5, as soon as the Lord became a teacher, many students came to him, every one of them astonished to hear his mode of explanation. Text 6. The Lord defeated all kinds of scholars in discourses about all the scriptures, yet because of his gentle behavior, none of them were unhappy. Text 7. The Lord, as a teacher, performed various kinds of pranks in his sporting pastimes in the water of the Ganges. After some days, the Lord went to East Bengal, and wherever he went, he introduced the Sankirtan movement. purport. Although Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his devotees in disciplic succession can defeat all kinds of learned scholars, scientists and philosophers in arguments, thus establishing the supremacy of the personality of Godhead, their main business as preachers is to introduce Sankirtan everywhere. Simply to defeat scholars and philosophers is not the occupation of a preacher. Preachers must simultaneously introduce the Sankirtan movement, for that is the mission of the Chaitanya cult. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langaite girim yat kripa tamaham vande Sri Gurum dinatarinam param ananda madhavam Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram. So here, continuing the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya in his youth, and it is known very well that when Lord Chaitanya was in Navadvip, is it loud enough you can hear there outside? Is it loud enough? No, I mean, maybe we should turn this up a little bit. You can, but can we turn this up a little bit? I'm thinking of even on the internet, this mic is really low, and even on the internet they won't be able to hear on the recording. Thanks, Ruth. Just the same one, you can push that out a little bit more. So that's better, thank you, Haribol. So Lord Chaitanya, he was he was actually known as a great scholar, and even some devotees would in Navadvip, before he was initiated, before he really fully manifested love of Godhead, he was known as a great scholar at this time. And you can see, even by the age of 11, he had students already at the age of 11. So you can just imagine, age of 11 is grade 5, right? In the kids here in school. So you can imagine the grade 5 students coming, and then they have like adult students learning from them, Sanskrit grammar and everything. Pretty amazing, right? So this is what was happening. And Lord Chaitanya was such an incredible philosopher that he would just meet people on the street and just start debating them in the scriptures. And oftentimes people would see him coming like, there's Lord Chaitanya, there's Nimai Pandit, oh quick, cross over the other side of the road, and then pretend they didn't see him and just kind of walk the other way. Because he would, as it says here, the Lord defeated all kinds of scholars in discourses about the scriptures. But it's said here that because of his gentle behavior, none of them were unhappy. So they would try to avoid him because he was so intelligent. They knew they were going to be defeated, but even when they were defeated, they weren't unhappy. Just like Lord Chaitanya, he defeated the Digvijay Pandit. What was his name? That Keshava Kashmiri. Thank you. Yeah. So he was this very, very learned scholar, was traveling all over India, and we know back in those days, the sort of like the sports, nowadays we have the sports, and everyone's very much, following all the different sports, and it's a great way for people to forget about the actual, birth, death, old age and disease, to actually forget about the realities of life is to become all, completely absorbed in the sports. But back even 500 years ago in India, the main sports were actually discourses about scripture that actually have debates, philosophical debates. And the great pundit, would travel around, and then they would come, and the best pundit from this town would meet them, and they would debate, on what was the true import, the true meaning of the scriptures. And we can see this from this great tradition of debate and scholarship. Practically, the great religions of the world either came from India, Hinduism and Buddhism, and so many of the philosophies came from this great tradition of debate. And it wasn't that there was like a kind of religious, what do you call, fanaticism that, you have to do this or we'll basically kill you. Like this was this is the history of some of the religious paths of the world. This was the history, but that was never the history in India. The history was always a competition of ideas that they would debate and see what was the best idea, what stood up to rigorous debate. So very interesting. But Lord Chaitanya here, he was, as Nimai Pandit, was the most expert debater, and he would debate and be able to defeat scholars, and with his extreme, incredible, broad knowledge, and how he could apply the knowledge of the Vedas to all the different situations. Of course, with Keshava Kashmiri, he was a little bit proud, and he came before Lord Chaitanya, and Lord Chaitanya said to him, Nimai Pandit said, "Well, you're a very great scholar. I'd like to hear some verses in glorification of the Ganges." So this great scholar, Keshava Kashmiri, he started reciting verses in praise of the Ganges, and he, like the wind, just on, without any preparation, he just immediately started making Sanskrit verses, Sanskrit slokas. So we know anybody who's tried to learn slokas with our Kali Yuga brains, it's not that easy to learn a sloka, right? Sometimes it takes some days to actually learn a Sanskrit sloka, right? Anybody had that experience? Anybody here able to just read a sloka and just immediately, yes? No. When I was in the temple, living in the temple in Brisbane, and we were trying to learn slokas, and I would get cards of slokas, like the old index cards you had, and write each of the Sanskrit words out, and then space it so that in English I could write the meaning of each Sanskrit word in red pen underneath. And the Srinkavash actually showed me this back in the 90s, and so I would do that every day, and I'd take that card everywhere. As a bhakti, you're doing the pots, whatever, so you put the card up there, and you're learning the sloka. Dehino, of the body, of the embodied, asmin in yata, as dehe, of the body, komaram, youth, like doing the pots and you're learning the slokas. So like it took a whole day, of like learning to commit the sloka to memory, It's a big deal. So we can just imagine, we can't even really imagine what is the brain power of someone that can just create on the fly 100 Sanskrit slokas. We can't even learn one that somebody else has made, right? Who are these people? So, these are the people, and this is just one, fairly insignificant scholar. Of course, he was very famous at the time, but in the breadth of the Vedic, sages, who we're talking about, who are these people? Vyasadeva, Shukadev Goswami, Jiva Goswami, Rupa Goswami. These are the people that we're learning from. When we actually put it in perspective and try to understand, even try to learn a sloka, and we can understand how these people can recite 100 slokas. So anyway, he recited his 100 slokas, and Nimai Pandit was like, "Oh, you are so learned, you're so amazing." So he'd always do that. He'd always kind of puff them up a bit, praise them a bit. And this Pandit's like, "Yes," recited. So then at the end of it, he got to the end of the 100, and Lord Chaitanya said, "Oh, that was so good." And the Pandit was feeling, yes. He said, "Yo, you are so amazing." And he said, "Yes." And he said, "I just have one question." He said, "Okay, anything you want, I can." He said, "That sloka number 57, I can't remember the exact number, but he knew the exact number. He said, "That sloka 57, can you just explain that to me? I didn't quite get that." And he's like, how did he even remember that one? And he said, you said this, you said, the husband of the wife of Lord Shiva, because it was, I think, Bharta, I can't remember the exact Sanskrit, but something like Bharta something, that Parvati, so the husband of the wife of Lord Shiva. And he's saying, if you say that, and it was just a name of Lord Shiva, and he said, if you say that, it sounds like maybe the wife of Lord Shiva has another husband. And he's saying, because of the repetition, that's actually a fault. And the Pandit was like, oh, what have I got myself into? So like this, he picked out a couple of different faults in it, and then the Pandit, the Digvijay Pandit, was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe this boy is like 11-year-old boy. He's shown me up." So he went home, and he was a great devotee of Saraswati Devi. So he was worshipping Mother Saraswati. This is how he was getting all this amazing, she's the goddess of learning, right? So he was worshipping Goddess Lakshmi Devi and getting all this learning and amazing ability. So he went home and he's praying to God. It's like, what happened? Like, I prayed to you. Did I commit some offense in my worship to you, Mother Saraswati, Goddess Saraswati? What happened? And then he had a dream that day, and Goddess Saraswati came in his dream and said, "Oh," she said, no, there's no problem. You didn't make any offense or anything. But you have to understand that this person you're debating, he's my master. He's the Supreme Lord, actually. He's the Lord of me. He's the one I get my potency from. So he said, "Oh, okay." So then the next day he went and he surrendered to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and like that. So like that, Lord Chaitanya, as Nimai Pandit, he was, super famous as the one who could defeat anybody in debate. And even some of the people who later became his devotees, I think Mukunda was one of them, became a great associate of Lord Chaitanya. At this time, they would literally try to avoid him because he was just so incredible in his debate. But we can see here in text number 8, very interesting, that is described here when he went to East Bengal, which is currently the Bangladesh area. And it says here, wherever he went, he introduced the Sankirtan movement. Tahan loyaya nama Sankirtan. And in the purport to this verse, Srila Prabhupada makes the point that the main business of the preachers of the Krishna consciousness movement is to introduce Sankirtan. And we can see that these early pastimes of Lord Chaitanya as a great philosopher, as a great scholar, they were really just the lead up to his real pastimes of not that those pastimes weren't real, but his full manifested pastimes as preacher of devotional service, as a devotee of Krishna, as the Yuga Dharma of Sankirtan. And this he began at this time, and Srila Prabhupada makes the point that this is the real business of somebody trying to spread, a preacher or somebody spreading love of God in the line of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is to introduce Sankirtan, not simply to try to defeat people philosophically, defeat their arguments. And we can see that when we, most of us who joined the Krishna conscious movement, we were attracted by the Sankirtan. We were attracted by the feeling of the chanting, what it was like to chant, the prasadam. These are the things that attract us. And the philosophy also was important. But many devotees will say that the feeling that we get when we first come into Krishna consciousness, that Sankirtan, that experience is given by the Sankirtan, by chanting, by kirtan. And we can also see that when we go out to, when we preaching, especially, preaching just means spreading, sharing Krishna consciousness. There's many people that we may not at all be able to engage with them philosophically at all, especially family members or people that we meet here and there. We can't just straight away say, oh, do you know you're not the body? You're wasting your time. You have this job, you're spending so much time on that, but actually don't you realize this life is temporary and you're an eternal soul, and you have to, as much as we might like to say that to our family members, they're kind of like, what? Like it's very difficult to do that. But to introduce the Sankirtan movement, especially prasadam, right? By giving some prasadam to them, or exposing them to some nice kirtan. So this is actually the way that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would, his main, spreading of his movement was through Sankirtan and prasadam. He would, go somewhere and he would have huge Sankirtans where the chanting would just go on and on, like we did this morning. We had kirtan for about 20 minutes or something, 25 minutes. But these kirtans would just go on for hours and hours and hours, just like continually. And this was how he spread his movement. Later he would, talk philosophy to certain devotees, and we can read in Caitanya Caritamrita, and that philosophy is very important. He would talk about what is the philosophy to Rupa Goswami. He gave Sanatana Goswami, he gave the philosophy, and they wrote it down. But the most of his time was in chanting, engaging people in Sankirtan. Prabhupada says, the main business of preachers to introduce Sankirtan everywhere. Simply to defeat scholars and philosophers is not the occupation of a preacher. Preachers must simultaneously introduce the Sankirtan movement. And this is kind of a relief, actually, right? If we're trying to spread Krishna consciousness, isn't it? It's like a relief. Oh, wow. I was literally relieved when I read this. Simply to defeat scholars and philosophers is not the occupation of a preacher, right? So it's kind of a relief for us, because we don't have to go out there and, to spread Krishna consciousness, we don't have to go out there and every person we go try to engage with them. What's your philosophy? Oh, that's wrong because, that's like Buddhism, that's not, the Vedas is a superior. We don't have to we don't have to get into a whole fight with people, Prabhupada's saying, because we have to be strong philosophically, and we have to be able to present our philosophy. But Prabhupada says is simply to defeat scholars and philosophers is not the occupation of a preacher. Preachers must simultaneously, so simultaneously means the philosophy has to be there also, right? But they must simultaneously introduce the Sankirtan movement, right? And we know when people start to chant Hare Krishna, right, when they actually take to this mantra, then the ability to understand these things, the heart becomes softer, and some understanding of philosophy can come, right? And if somebody, it's like he says here that none of the people that Lord Chaitanya defeated were unhappy, but that may not be the case with us. We may think, I've defeated someone philosophically, yes, but if they're not happy about it, what's the point, right? They just think, yeah, I met this Hare Krishna and he said all this stuff and then I felt bad. I mean, kind of like, if that's the, you know what I mean? Sorry to put it bluntly, but if that's the experience of the person, they're not going to be very attracted, right? But when they hear, wow, these guys were sitting and they're doing this nice music and they had really nice beat and there was this mantra, something, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Ram or something. They like remember the mantra and then this food, oh my God, they had this food, it was amazing. Then they're attracted and then there's some experience there. And they're becoming purified by engaging in the mantra. So this is very wonderful that, and like I said, it's kind of relieving that, I think when we, when I was a newer devotee, I remember going out on books, I was like, okay, I have to kind of just defeat everyone. I remember standing once in Melbourne on the street and arguing with this Buddhist guy for about 20 minutes and then I was like, what did I achieve there? Nothing. But this is a thing as we as we progress a little bit and we can see that the main thing is just to try to inject something in the people, whoever we're meeting. Maybe on the street, maybe directly preaching, right? Or maybe family members, or maybe just people we meet. If we can engage them somehow, like we have the restaurant, we're able to engage people in hearing some kirtan and taking some prasadam, and many times they read books and things. So like that, we can do, connect with people how we can. But we don't have to sort of defeat them on the spot, How Srila Prabhupada, how he talked to people, we can learn so much from. There's so many videos, you can actually just watch a video of Prabhupada talking to people. He was very kind, very gentle. Sometimes he would be, controversial with people if they were kind of asking controversial questions. There's like that video with Cardinal Danielou in France where Prabhupada was extremely strong, but he was very, very, obviously very gentlemanly and very very dignified and everything. He didn't argue with him, but he just kept asking the question, what about the animals? You're talking about love and you're talking about, doesn't it say thou shalt not kill? He just kept coming back to that. And they did a close-up of this cardinal's hands and he started all fidgeting and everything. And Prabhupada's just sitting, and what about the animals? Does it say thou shalt not kill? Oh, we have to eat meat and this and that. So Prabhupada, you can watch how he would introduce things and talk to people, and many different ways he would present to different people. But it definitely wasn't always just like in his classes is very, very strong. But when he's talking with people, he's very present with the person, And devotees who were with Prabhupada said that was one of the things that sometimes. Prabhupada they couldn't really, they thought he was going to act a certain way and he didn't. And one example, they were saying that one man came and he was either the next door neighbor or just somebody there. I can't even remember where Prabhupada was in the world. But he just came and he sat there and Prabhupada could understand that he wasn't really into philosophy, he wasn't really into... but he wasn't envious, he was very innocent. And Prabhupada just called for his harmonium and he played bhajans for about 20 minutes. And the man just sat there and Prabhupada finished and said, thank you so much, it's very nice to be in your presence. And then Prabhupada said, nice, gave him some prasadam and left. He just played a bhajan for him. So anyway, my point is that he reciprocated with whoever, however the person was. And just trying to introduce the Sankirtan movement, do some prasadam, give them a book, do some bhajan with them, engage them somehow, right? Preachers must simultaneously introduce the Sankirtan movement, but that is the mission of the Caitanya cult. It comes to mind one pastime you might know when Lord Chaitanya was in when he first started doing the kirtans in Srivas Thakur's house, all the devotees were there doing kirtan in the house, and one brahmachari yogi had come, and he'd been in the Himalayas, and then he'd come to Srivas Thakur and he'd said, "Oh, I really want to hear, I've heard about these Sankirtan, these kirtans, and I really want to go there and listen to these kirtans in the house." And so Srivas Thakur said, "No, that's not possible. Only devotees are allowed in there." So then he said, "Oh, I'm a brahmachari, I'm a yogi, I'm simply just drink a little bit of milk each day, I'm dressed in tree bark, I'm completely renounced." So then Srivas Thakur said, "Okay, fair enough. You can hide just in the side there, in the house, and just peep through this little crack in the window you can see, and you can watch the kirtan from there." So that day, that night, Lord Chaitanya was coming, and they started up the kirtan, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare. And they're all dancing in ecstasy, and Lord Chaitanya starts to dance, and the whole kirtan just starts to go. And then after just a few minutes, Lord Chaitanya stopped the kirtan and he said, "What's happening?" He said, "I'm not feeling the same ecstasy with my devotees that I always feel in this kirtan. There's something wrong in this kirtan. There's something that shouldn't be there, or someone that shouldn't be here in this kirtan." And so all the devotees, it's described that all the devotees thought that, "Oh, maybe there's some fault in my heart. Maybe there's something I've done." We can see the devotees are always very humble. And the devotees were all the devotees were thinking, "Oh, it must be me. Must be my impurities." Right? We can see that there's a, what do they call it, recreational outrage. It's very, very common nowadays on the internet where people love, get outraged about this. It was their fault. See, it's them. They did it, or he did it, or she did it. That organization did it, or something. A lot of externalizing of issues. Because there are issues. Issues should be dealt with, no doubt. But there's a lot of nowadays. There's a lot of pointing the finger away from oneself, right? That it's their fault. They did something. But really, the progressive path is really to see. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati used to always say this, like, before you find fault in someone else, then check up what is a fault in you, right? I think in the Bible it says, before you try to take the splinter out of someone's eye, then first take the log out of your own. So something like that. So like this, the science of self-realization. It's really about ourself, and when we get some understanding of what actually is our karmic situation, we just can understand, this is 108%, this is my issue, my fault, I've done this. In previous lifetimes, I've acted like this, I've acted like that, I've done that, and I'm getting the results now. I'm getting the results of my previous activities. And these anarthas, or these unwanted things in my heart, are why I'm not able to practice Krishna consciousness actually, properly. Krishna says, what is that verse? Yesham tva antagatam papam jananam punya karmanam jedvanva moha nirmuktam bhajanti mam dridhavrataha. Krishna says that to those who are free from, when you're free from all your sinful activity, the reactions to the sinful activities, the bad karmic activities from the past lives, when you're freed from that, you become free from the dualities of the world. What are those dualities of the world? Desire and hate. The dualities is like, that person is my friend, that person is my enemy. I really like this part of the material world, I really hate that part of the material world. These dualities of the world. Because actually, we are spirit soul, right? We are pure spirit soul. We're nothing to do with this world, actually. We're identifying with our mind, we're identifying with our body. The next life will be some other person, will be some other mind, some other body, right? So we are not. Sorry, I just lost the thread there. I lost the thread of what I was saying. Can anyone remind? I was just going on an example, but I went too far down. Couldn't get back. We're talking about the brahmachari yogi, about he was hiding to see, but what was I talking about? Yeah, okay, we'll go back to that. But there was some point I was making there. That yesham tvantagatam papam jananam punyakamanam. But basically, that's what it was. Thank you. That we have to really understand, like these devotees were thinking, that there's something in my heart that's the problem. When there's some problem that we see, we're having some problem in the world, the devotees think, oh, there's something in me. What have I, what is the impurity in my heart that's creating this difficulty? I'm having difficulty with someone. Oh, what's that in my heart? And if you see, if all the devotees are like that, then it's like Vaikuntha, right? Because there's some difficulty between devotees, and both devotees are thinking, oh, what's my part in it? How can I change how I'm perceiving it? How can I change how I'm acting? How can I change how I'm thinking to be able to make this work? So if two people are both thinking like that, then it can work, right? And that's Vaikuntha, right? That's a spiritual world. Then what's the other part? What's the other option? Is two people have a fight and they're both pointing the finger at the other one. You have to change. You're doing this. And the other one's looking back at, you have to change. You're doing this. So what's actually happening is neither of them are changing. Isn't it? You understand? Neither of them are changing because they're both pointing the finger saying, you need to change. And the other guy's going, no, you need to change. So whatever difficulty there stays, because the relationship is the same. The two things in the relationship are not changing. But when the two things or the two people in the relationship are both thinking, how do I need to change? How can I adjust to make this work? Right? Then the relationship works. Of course, if one person is thinking, how do I adjust to make this work? And the other person is always thinking, it's your fault. Then it's like, you got to get out of there. That's not going to work. That's not going to work. Or you help the person to see. Anyway, I digress. But this is what the devotees were thinking. Oh, what have I done? What have I done here to make Lord Chaitanya not be feeling ecstasy? But actually, Srivas Thakur, he knew that what he'd done, and so he told Lord Chaitanya this brahmachari yogi was there, and he's very austere, he's come from the Himalayas, he's wearing tree bark. So Lord Chaitanya said, all right, bring that brahmachari yogi. And he brought him, and Lord Chaitanya said to him, you're just, basically you're just pretending. You're dressed in all the tree bark, you come from the Himalayas, but why are you here? If you really were renounced, why didn't you just stay in the Himalayas? But you come here to show off your tree bark and your matted hair and all the dreadlocks and how austere you are and everything to all the householders here in the cities. He said, these are householders here. They just have simple life, they have the husband and wife, they have some kids, they're doing their duties, they have their jobs, whatever they're doing. But actually they're surrendered to the Lord. They're actually genuinely trying to please the Lord, give up their selfish desire and actually serve the Lord, become devotees of the Lord. He said, but you're just trying to show off. It's actually all about you. It's not about the Lord. You don't have bhakti. You're not qualified to be in this kirtan. So take him out. Threw him out the door. So then the kirtan started up again. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare. And all the devotees started chanting, and it was very blissful. And that brahmachari yogi, he was outside sitting down, and he started to think, actually he started to develop some humility, and he actually was thinking to himself, Lord Chaitanya was right actually. I'm just trying to show off by, wearing the tree bark and the dreadlocks and saying, I'm a yogi from the Himalayas and this and that. And actually these devotees, they are actually really renounced in their hearts. Lord Chaitanya was right actually. I am just a pretender basically. But maybe one day if I could just develop some sincerity, if I could actually be sincere to try to serve the Lord, try to please the Lord, maybe then actually I could one day be allowed to come into the kirtan of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He's so great, and all these devotees are so wonderful, they're so incredible, they're actually so elevated. So like this, he started to appreciate the devotees with some genuine humility. And Lord Chaitanya could understand that. And then he sent his devotees, he said, bring that yogi, now he's qualified to enter the kirtan, actually. Yeah. So, this is the Prabhupada saying, the preachers simultaneously introduce the Sankirtan movement. It's a very, very deep way that the heart has to be, and of course we're all developing that. We're just tiny little way down the path, but we're trying to make some progress on making, having the proper mentality and the proper mood and service mood. Like we sing in the morning, Seva Adhikara Diye Koro Nijadasi, right? We're praying to Tulsi Devi, Seva Adhikara. Adhikar means the qualification of seva adhikar, the qualification to have that service attitude to enter into the Sankirtan, and that's what we, as representatives of Srila Prabhupada in disciplic succession, this is our job, as Prabhupada said, not just to defeat philosophically and try to establish that we're right and you're wrong and all this stuff, but to actually introduce the Sankirtan movement, to engage people in chanting Hare Krishna and allow them to soften their heart to feel that love of God that's coming through the Sankirtan movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, thank you very much. I'll stop there. Just a couple of minutes if there's any comment or question from anyone. Rupa, I don't know where the other mic is. Do you want to just grab this one? Then the people online can hear you.
Thanks for your class, Prabhu. So I'm spreading the Sankirtan movement. Srila Prabhupada, he really pushed the book distribution, Prashadam distribution, Harinam Sankirtan, and we see that so much has gone on in different centres around the world preaching like that. So many, the movement has expanded and many devotees been made and people purified. But and it seems like there's a lot of prashadam distribution going on, and also makes a lot of money for the movement through catering and restaurants and also book distribution can bring in a lot of money. But we see that seems like Harinam Sankirtan may be somewhat neglected. Some temples, there's basically no Harinams at all going out in the streets these days. And it seems like, maybe devotees, there's that mood, well, it doesn't really make money, so devotees sort of neglect the Harinam. But if you look from a broader angle, it seems like many devotees have been made through the Harinam Sankirtan parties going out chanting in the streets. Just one story I remember hearing years ago, there was an article on a BTG of one devotee who was going to university. He wasn't a devotee, but he saw one brahmachari or sannyasi chanting on the campus like when he entered, and then 6-8 hours later he came back and there was that one devotee still chanting there. He'd be chanting all day. And then he came back the next day, and then there was two, sannyasi and brahmachari, two of them chanting there, same thing. And he came back at the end of the day, they were still chanting. And this time he stopped and they gave him a card for the temple, and he came soon after that and he joined. He was so inspired, obviously so purified by hearing all the chanting. And many people, they're always telling us all the time, we miss you guys chanting out in the streets. So it seems like, the chanting, the Harinam Sankirtan, it does and has made many devotees, and is a powerful process to make devotees who in their turn, spread the movement, make money for the movement. So I don't know if you'd like to comment on that.
Hare Krishna. Yes. Well, I mean, I am not the great example because I don't go much on Harinam, although I should, and I definitely. But so I can't sit here and preach whatever. But the fact is that what you said it all. Like, if we're making devotees, which is kind of a funny term anyway, making devotees, but that's what we say in ISKCON, right? We're making devotees. But if we're attracting people to come and take up the Sankirtan movement, and those people will bring so many things with them, right? Ability to do so many different things, So if the spiritual thing, this I think really is Prabhupada's preaching throughout, that if the spiritual impetus is strong by getting people to do Sankirtan, by getting people to study the philosophy, by getting them to really chant Hare Krishna attentively, then they're engaged, then everything else happens. The management follows like a shadow, Prabhupada said, So management, money, resources, all these things follow like the shadow of spirituality, And the danger is always there, not just in ISKCON or in the Hare Krishna movement, but in any movement, any idealistic movement, spiritual movement, there's always that danger that it's a spiritual movement, but you start to look at it materially. Saying, we've got to pay this, we've got to do that. So let's just decrease, we have this manpower, let's just decrease the amount they spend on spiritual things, the amount of time, and then get them to just go and collect some things and, collect some money and then we'll solve our problems. Prabhupada wasn't into that. Many people, they said, we'll make a business selling jewelry or incense or something. Prabhupada said, better you sell the books, because then you're engaging in spiritual activity, and other things will always follow. So, completely. We always have to be careful that we're not, acting in a spiritual movement, that we're not acting in a materialistic way, trying to find material solutions to what are really spiritual problems. Because if there's not enough resources, means not enough people, means there's not enough spiritual shelter to attract the people or to shelter people, because ultimately that's it. People are looking for shelter, right? People are coming to the movement for shelter, right? We all came for shelter. we're not feeling shelter out there. People, everybody's just trying to take from us in the material world, and we're not feeling satisfied at heart. So the more spiritual shelter that's given, then the more people will come. And those people can, whatever, money, manpower, whatever, that's all included in that. So I think here at New Govardhana, we have very, very healthy Harinam culture, right? Vasu Prabhu and Surat Prabhu going out, Vishnu Jam Prabhu, and they're going, Nandu Prabhu, all these devotees are going out. There's at least 2 or 3 different, every week, parties that go out on the weekends doing Harinam. So, yeah, and in the early days, that's all they did. That was it. Like, there was just that was it. All day, just do Harinam. There'd be one devotee left behind to do the offerings, cook the offering, and make the offerings for the deities. And everyone would be out there chanting on the street all day. So that's how the movement was exploding, right? Because, wow, they feel that spiritual shelter. So yes, we have to always be careful that that's there. Yeah. All right. Hare Krishna, Manji, yes. I don't know if this is authorized. We're going over time, but that's right. Isaac. I guess it's a Sunday, so Sunday morning.
Thank you for the class. I found it interesting that Lord Chaitanya, he had private kirtans, and he felt something not right when that brahmachari was there. And I was just remembering Vaisheshika Prabhu, he talked about that pastime. He said, if that was the case, every baby would be a pure devotee. And I remember Krishna Kirtan Prabhu a few years ago, he was saying, this body is a yantra. And he said, everyone thinks babies are so cute, but they have these, all their desires are dormant. As soon as they hit their teenage years, even devotee kids. So, yeah, that was kind of like very heavy. So my question is that Lord Chaitanya was he's very merciful, and he goes out freely distributing the holy names. And then when there's private kirtans, he is very strict. So I found that quite interesting. Could you talk a bit about that?
That also was in the very early days of the Sankirtan movement, when Lord Chaitanya was with Srivas Thakur and other devotees at Srivas's house, and they weren't doing Sankirtan outside at that time. And actually when when he started doing external Sankirtan was when some of the caste brahmanas and even some of the Muslim people of the area were complaining about his chanting. Mostly it was the Hindus who were complaining. Actually, the Brahmins were complaining that he was allowing anyone, and his followers weren't all Brahmins, but they were chanting the sacred mantras of the Vedas, the Hare Krishna mantra. So they were sort of thinking that their occupation was being challenged. But anyway, it was mostly there. It was in private, and then they chanted. They went to the Chand Kazi's house, and they got hundreds of thousands of people as a protest, because the Chand Kazi, the leader of the area, was coming, and he broke the mridangas and said, "Stop this kirtan! You can't do chanting anymore. Stop!" So like that, and then they went outside, and after that they would go outside, But generally, yeah, Lord Chaitanya, he was very liberal in kirtan and prasadam distribution. So many festivals you can see like that. But he would only discuss philosophy and especially more like, his internal leela. There's that external leela of establishing the Sankirtan movement, and then there's the internal leela of his own experience as taking the mood of Srimati Radharani to be able to experience that whole mood. So they're his two reasons. Yeah. I don't know any examples where he was that so strict later on as what he was at that time, because it was a very closed place, you know. At Srivas Angam, it was just those devotees, and there was nobody else. They would close the doors. But that was the beginning of his movement. Yeah. But then a lot of times like when he went to Puri, he was in Rath Yatra, you know, so it was like thousands of people. But yeah, go on.
Mukunda, when he wanted to enter that kirtan, then he found out, you know, his mood wasn't right, and then afterwards he allowed him when he saw the mood change. So yeah, as you were saying, there's some internal more deeper topics and kirtan when they're probably having discussions as well. So those are.
Well, I think with Mukunda was that he was hearing from other people. He was going, you know, to hear from other, like Mayavada and different impersonalists, and he was just hearing from anyone here and there. And then Lord Chaitanya told him not to, and then he kept doing it. So he said, all right, then you can't go and hear from all these other people and then come and, he said, he was making that point. That was more about philosophy, yeah. So, yeah. Anything else? Yes. Yep.
It seemed, you know, I hear this story and you think, oh, but isn't Lord Chaitanya about inclusivity, you know? But it gave that brahmachari an opportunity to develop that humility. So there was some grace in that at work, and I get.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I was just thinking when you were saying that about the fact that he was sort of thrown out, and at that point he developed humility, and he prayed to sort of come back in. And I think that's for a lot of devotees, and I know in my life as well, there's been certain points where I've sort of been like, not thrown out, but like, okay, you don't have that service anymore, or something's changed, you know, okay, that's not. And I think that can be a real quantum leap for devotees, that when that happens, like, do you become critical and bitter? And it's bitter. It is bitter, no doubt. It's a bitter medicine. But what do you do with that bitter medicine? I think that's a real quantum thing. I remember once hearing Ravindra Swarup Prabhu talk about this with there was a particular issue, and it doesn't really matter what the issue is, but there's always issues. Like from time immemorial, there's going to be issues. There always has been. In the time of Lord Chaitanya, there were issues. There's a whole book about when your guru has problems, written by Narahari Saka, you know, we sing every night. Narahari Adhika, like he wrote a whole book about it. So there's always issues, but he said that there's a certain psychological thing that happens when someone has an issue with something else, and it can be another person or it can be an institution or whatever. So in this case, we're talking about an institution. When someone has a problem with the institution, and if there's not enough humility, what happens is that that person thinks that there's a problem between me and this institution, or me and this other group, just say a group of people. And if there's not enough humility, they naturally think there's nothing wrong with themselves. And the same point, right, in this pastime, that all the devotees were thinking, oh, what's wrong with me? What am I doing wrong? What's the impurity in my heart? So if there's not enough of that, they think that there's nothing wrong with me, but there's a problem in this relationship, so there must be a problem with that other group of people. And then they start to try to find things that are wrong. And, you know, if you're talking about a huge movement of tens of thousands of people all around the world and 600 different temples that's been going on for 50-something years, yeah, if you look, you'll find things. And so that, you know, that's a really, you know, sort of like a quantum leap, that if your service is taken away, if things don't work out how you thought, do you take the approach of this brahmachari yogi and humbly say, oh, actually, yeah, I actually did have, I did actually become proud. I did actually become selfish. I was thinking about my own perspective. I wasn't actually acting properly in bhakti in this situation. And if you think like that, then you can have the right attitude to come back in service in some other way. But if you don't have that proper attitude and think that oh, that's just something wrong with them, that I'm done with these people. I'm done. That's it. I'm out of here. I'm not having anything to do with this anymore. And of course, to say there's always the case where that's understandable as well, right? If there have been cases of abuse, especially when people are young, then that's understandable. So I'm not talking about those cases here. But in general, when we're talking about adults and the general run-of-the-mill of our devotional service, how sometimes things work, sometimes things don't, then that's really, thank you for bringing that up. I think that's really the quantum, what is it, the leap? Like that's the point, I think, that we can learn from that. And yes, Lord Chaitanya is very inclusive, but he's prodding us, right? He's pushing us, like, okay, come on, and you've been in the movement a year, you've been in the movement 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. All right, come on, now let's get something happening here, and it's oftentimes, if we look in his pastimes, might be with Chota Haridas or these people. Externally, it looks like he completely rejected them, never see them again. But then internally, their devotion came and it was still there. So, yeah, he's always there, but it may externally it may be very intense. So, yeah, that word inclusive is, I don't think it's a Bengali word. You know what I'm saying? It's a kind of one of those words from another culture but he is inclusive, obviously. Yes, you're right. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha. Kripa sindhu vecha. Paditanam pavanebhu vaishnava. Yeah.